Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of What Do You Call It? Podcast. I'm your host, GB, and my next guest, 1, 2, 3, is a former original Extreme Championship Wrestling referee. Please give up for Jim Molineaux. How you doing today, sir? You all right?
Good. I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. It's the weekend, sun is shining, and as just before we recorded this, you were telling me it's nice weather up at your ends as well. So I'm glad to hear.
Yeah, it's great here in New Jersey today.
Awesome,
one of the few
mate.
days.
That's good, man. So we're gonna have a little chit chat, basically about your career in wrestling, and you were there basically at a time where it's looked back, so many fans' memories, with such a smile, and you was involved in something special. But before we do get there, I want to know: have you been a wrestling fan all your life?
Yeah, pretty much. When I was a kid, I grew up. I'm a little bit older than you. I grew up on the WWF. So outside of Philadelphia. So I grew up in that territory, and it was before cable TV. So I didn't get the NWA or anybody else. So that was the promotion I grew up on. So Bruno Sammartino, Bob Backlund were the champions. And then, eventually the Hogan era came in, and, we all know what happened. Vince Sr. bought out his dad and all that. But yeah, that was the kind of stuff I grew up on as a kid. And I got away from it for quite a long time. Philadelphia was a busy sports area growing up when I was a kid. The Phillies were fairly hot for baseball, and the Sixers had just gotten some bigger name players. And for me, I was a hockey fan. I'm still a hockey fan. And the Flyers had won the Stanley Cup and had quite a reputation in the NHL, even though they haven't won the Stanley Cup since. At the time, they had quite a reputation as being mean and nasty. Like the league hated them. But I grew up on Flyers hockey. So I got away from it. Also got into music for a while. The era of classic rock, Peter Frampton, Black Sabbath, Van Halen, things like that. So I got away from it for a while and then got into it later in life. Thanks. Got into it later in life. A guy that I worked with was a wrestling fan, and we started watching NWA and all that kind of stuff because now we had cable in the area. So that was really what hooked me was seeing the NWA and Ric Flair, the Horsemen, the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express, the Fantastics, all that kind of stuff was what hooked me and got me into thinking, well, I'd like to give it a try, getting into it somehow.
Okay, so basically, I feel like I have to let you continue. So when you say you give it a try, did you always want to be a referee, or was there any other roles that you wanted to try first? Was that in terms of being an actual wrestler, a manager, just various roles, really?
Yeah, at the time, I'm not a large person. So at the time it was, the Hulk Hogan's and the Sid Viciouses were the main name wrestlers. I shouldn't say name wrestlers, but that was the persona of a wrestler at the time.
Yeah.
So I wasn't that athletic, so I thought that can't be a wrestler. Let me try being a manager. I have a gift of gab a little bit, so let me give it a shot. I tried it a couple times on a couple of independent shows. Came up with a persona, and so I wanted to move on to the next level, and the next level really was locally a company called TWA, the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance, which was owned by Joel Goodhart. And I knew Joel through his fan club, and he was one of the local ring announcers also, mainly for the NWA when they came to town. So I approached Joel and said, hey, can you use another manager? And he's like, no, I have Donnie Allen managing, and he used a woman at the time, Nancy Benoit, and Luna Vachon. So he goes, I really don't need a manager, but I could really use another referee. And talked to me about being a referee and what I'd have to go through the training and what it would cost for the training, and promised me and kept his promise. I'll give him this. You don't hear this a lot from promoters, but he kept his promise that in a year's time I would make back what I put into my training, and I did. So he said, talk to your wife, get back to me in a couple of days and let me know what you think. So I hung up and I talked to my wife, and I called him back 10 minutes later and said, I'm in. And so like the next Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever training days it was, I went to the school that he had and met with Larry Winters, who was the wrestling trainer. But he also helped out with everybody else. And he was the booker for Tri-State, and later became the booker when ECW first started. And John Finnegan, the other referee from ECW that I worked with through the entire run of ECW, and John trained me, and that's where I started.
I have to ask, how is it that you would train someone to be a referee? I don't mean that in sort of in a belittling way, but I'm just very curious, because I do think I will get into it about the art of being a good referee and the psychology of it. But I just want to know, what was it like, and basically what was the routine of training to be a referee?
Well, the first thing they really kind of teach you is to stay out of the way, not to get caught up in the way. So you kind of are tossed into the ring, or at least I was tossed into the ring, and let the guys do their thing without even counting yet. Just being able to keep out of the way and get used to the guys moving in the ring, how they move, the way I should move to counter it, so I'm not in the way and everything. So that's really how you start. Then you worry about things like your count. You have to have a consistent count, even though my count might be different than another referee's. You want the consistent same count through the entire match, or even through an entire show, because you're going to work more than one match, hopefully. So yeah, that's really where you start with your training. And then, once you get that down, then you move up to the level of the guys are doing matches, or at least putting pieces of a match together. So you go along with them, and you work on your art while they're working on theirs.
Oh, okay, no, that's fair.
And then just then you get to the point where they're doing a whole match and you're doing the whole match. So you get really a good bond with certain wrestlers when you start your training. And a lot of those guys, when they went to start doing shows, then you would go start doing shows too, pretty much. I trained for 8 weeks before I did my first match.
Oh, didn't realize it can take that long. No, that's fair. I just want to know, what for you, I think you might have brushed over just briefly when you talk about the training, but what makes a good referee?
I think someone who shows the ability to make the crowd believe that you're in charge. Terry Funk, and it's credited to different other people, but I heard it from Terry Funk, is that if to make the people believe the match is real, and however you want to put it, you have to make the people believe you're real. So you have to call the match, and almost like you're really in charge of the match. So think of like an umpire in a baseball game, or a referee in a hockey game. They're talking to the players for various reasons. Especially in a hockey game, hey, keep the puck moving, keep it going. That's the kind of thing. It's kind of the way I looked at it as a wrestling referee. Hey, get off the ropes, keep your hands open. Come on, get off the ropes, break 1, 2, count. And just keep it like I'm trying to, be the enforcer of the match, enforcer of the rules of the match. And I've always told guys that I've trained, call it like it's real. And everyone will believe. Or hopefully everyone will believe.
One thing
because you want it, just real quick, because you want the people who are coming in and paying their money to come and see a wrestling match. You want to give them that escape for 2 hours or however long a show is, because especially nowadays there's so much crap going on out in the world that you want that bit of escape.
Yeah.
So you want, you really want them to believe, you want them cheering, and throwing, confetti in the air or whatever when like the hero tag team or the hero champion comes down the ring. And I wouldn't mind at all. I'd be happy if I was running a show and the bad guy who everyone hates, I would be happy if the place got flooded with trash, because I know that guy's working. We're doing his part and making everybody hate him. And you know what? Probably a good majority of those people are going to pay the same amount of money next month or whenever the next show is to see that guy get it coming to him. And the same with the good guys. As much as they cheer them, you want them to come back and see them, win the championship or get, to the next level. And, you want, like I said, you want everyone to believe. And for that little period of time, you want them to get that escape and you'll get them to come back. And it's all part of everyone working together is all part of getting the crowd to come back.
I think what you said as well, I think people do forget, and I forget myself sometimes, how important a good referee is to a match and the believability of it. I was just going to go back to something that you had said in a previous interview, that you said that a good referee is one that you don't necessarily notice, and one that's maybe quiet.
Correct.
That makes sense. And I actually, I just want to bring up that point because I absolutely do agree with you. We're not here to sort of talk about bad referees. That's not what this podcast is about. But I just wanted to basically bring you up on that point and say I 100% agree with you as a fan. And
right, yeah. Exactly. For someone that's not a real hardcore fan or goes over every little thing about a match. You don't remember who the referee is for a match. Yeah, there are matches that are significant in wrestling history, and who the referee is. Who the referee was for Hogan and Andre and things like that. But if you look at the rest of that WrestleMania 3, do you know what referees did what matches? That means that they did their job, because the spotlight's not about the referee. The spotlight's about the wrestlers.
Yeah, because I do feel some modern referees I just sort of had that problem, sort of separating themselves a bit. But I think that's what makes a good referee. I'm sort of a bit as an old school fan, so I believe that mentality. So we've talked about basically what makes a good referee, your journey to becoming a referee. What was your name as a manager, by the way? I just wanted to know. What was your manager gimmick just before you did become a referee? What was that?
It was extravagant Jimmy Fortune. My wife made some sequin or made a satin jacket for me and had sequins on it, kind of like a Bobby Heenan type of jacket.
Yeah.
And I had another jacket that I had tie-dyed. Had another jacket that I put, I don't know, like dollar signs on or something like that. And I carried a briefcase.
Nice.
I think I did maybe 3 shows of doing that. And
do you still have them, by the way?
No. I don't have. It's funny. I don't have a lot of memorabilia. The only things I really still have, I've got. If you remember, ECW put out their second game, and they had a book, a guidebook, the video game. I forget what it was called, but the video game had a guidebook, and we got we all had characters in it, and it had a biography and a 2-page spread. So I have a flat sheet of that I got framed, and I still have my passes for the pay-per-views. But that's it. I got rid of everything else. I probably shouldn't have, but I was like, somebody will get a kick out of it if they have it.
No, I find that a lot of wrestlers sort of, once they're sort of past it, in terms of it's in the back of them, that they either keep it or they don't. So that's sort of fair. And otherwise, Conrad Thompson would be knocking on your doors. So I want to talk about ECW. How did you get there, essentially? So because you was pretty much there from the early days when it was Eastern Championship Wrestling, wasn't you?
Well, like I said, I started with Tri-State Wrestling, and when Joel Goodhart closed it down, one of the financial backers was Todd Gordon. And we got a call after Tri-State shut down. Everybody got a call from Todd or someone that was working with Todd that hang tight. We're going to try something new. We're going to restart a new company, and you're welcome to come and be a part of it. And that was the beginning of ECW. We were running rec centers and high schools. There was a sports bar in Philadelphia we ran. I forget if we did it once a month or maybe every other month, but that was what we were doing at the time. So that was how I got into ECW.
Okay. And how did you find Paul Heyman as a boss when he would eventually take over Todd?
Paul was fine as a boss. He was different than what I was used to. Before Paul was the booker, and before he bought the company from Todd, the booker was Eddie Gilbert. And Eddie Gilbert would come into TV with 3 weeks of TV written down on a piece of paper. Paul would come into the building, open up a book with a blank piece of paper, and look around and see who's there and write names down and start putting matches together. He would still be putting matches together as we're going out for the first match. So it was a little bit different to get used to, but we did get used to. We all got used to it. But yeah, no, he was fine to work for. Paul and I were friends. I guess we're still friends. I haven't talked to him in years, but no problem with Paul.
Okay, cool. And in terms of ECW, one thing it's known for is its fans, and I'd like to know, because I think ECW Arena is probably the most famous sort of building associated with it, but I would like to know what other places have you enjoyed working at? The Hammerstein Ballroom, would that be one of them?
Yeah, the Hammerstein was good, but also before we were doing the Hammerstein in New York, there was the Elks Club that we ran on a fairly regular basis. That was a pretty wild building too. I loved the shows we used to do down in Florida because I'd get to Florida as opposed to like going to Chicago or Buffalo. Nothing against those cities, but we usually ended up going to like Buffalo in January and 2 feet of snow, as opposed to you go to Florida when it was nice. I also like going to New Orleans. There were good crowds in New Orleans. They appreciated the wrestling there a whole lot.
Everyone just associates the fans just wanting blood and guts, but it's not necessarily the case. They will, like you just said, they will appreciate good wrestling as well. And
yeah, I mean, the difference between crowds in like New Orleans or Chicago, I hate to say this about the ECW Philadelphia fans, but they kind of got spoiled. They saw everything. And Tommy Dreamer said to me one time, it's gotten to the point where I've done everything except taking a bullet. And we didn't want to do that. But they also got very defensive of the company and, would defend, what we did no matter what to the end. They would fight for us for the end. Maybe that was a bit of a detriment at times because I really kind of did get down to the point where they've seen everything. What do we do now?
Okay. And I'd like to know what have been some of the favorite matches that you did referee in ECW and that you were involved in.
I always go to the first, not that it's my favorite, but I think it has a lot of importance to the history of ECW. The night they crossed the line, the main event between Shane Douglas, Sabu, and Terry Funk. I think that really put ECW on the map internationally, not just nationally, but internationally at the time, because tape trading was such a big thing. We didn't have the internet, so we couldn't get things on YouTube and look them up in seconds. So everyone did tape trading, and I think that was probably one of the most traded tapes at the time, just for that match, 60-minute time limit match with no winner. I also enjoyed any time working with Malenko and Guerrero, the great matches with those guys.
Oh, superb athletes.
I love them. Love those matches. Working with Cactus Jack was always fun. Always worked well with Just Incredible and Jerry Lynn. They had great matches together. When Just Incredible and Lance Storm were a tag team, loved working with them too. It just, a lot of it isn't necessarily a favorite match. It's the people you become comfortable with. And if I'm comfortable with them, they should be comfortable with me. So it makes the matches a lot easier to work and run its course.
That's cool, man. Had Just Incredible on here not too long ago, and he speaks. You know, when he talks about ECW, there's still a smile on his face.
Yeah,
and, it's good to hear from people involved in ECW. So I think that's why I was happy to have you on the show, just to get to talk about it.
Yeah, Just Incredible, I think, was one of the better person carrying the flag of ECW as a champion.
Yeah,
I think he did a great job as that.
What did you think of WWE? Actually, no, before I do talk about WWECW, I want to talk about the One Night Stand pay-per-views when they brought it back that were produced by WWE. So you was involved in both the pay-per-views,
yes,
2005 and 2006. I just want to know, what's it like for you? In a way, it was sort of a farewell. I mean, that's probably what it was sort of presented to you at the time. But what was it like seeing the boys back together?
It was great. The 2005 one was really presented to us as, you know, a way to say goodbye to the fans. That's why they had it in New York. I wish they had it in Philadelphia, but I understand why there's not really a building in Philadelphia for them to have it in, unless you want to use the big arena, the big Wells Fargo arena, and they weren't going to put out the money of a 20,000 seater or however many it is. So yeah, I had no problem with where we were, but yeah, it was kind of presented to us as, you know, the way to say goodbye to the fans. It never happened. And we never did have a farewell to the fans, and we thought the fans deserved it. And I think the guys deserved it too. So that was how it presented to us. Went great. I had a great time there. That first one. The second one came around after we had been told they're going to restart ECW. And we want you to be part of it. And the story changed over the weeks but we did the show, we did the pay-per-view. No problem with the pay-per-view, had a great time. I only got to do one match because they had more WWE involvement with angles between WWE guys and ECW guys, where the first one
Tanaka really and Boss
Mahoney. The first, Tajiri and Balls was the match that I had in that one. I'm sorry, not Tajiri. Masato Tanaka. I'm sorry.
That's right.
That was the match that I had. And like I said, there was more involvement, and I think Edge was really involved with it. Yeah. And you had guys outside of WWE, but they had to get guys from WWE to come into ECW to make it more attractive to fans who weren't used to ECW. So I had no problem with that. I understood where they were going with it. Off Monday night, Tuesday was TV. Did that in Trenton, New Jersey, a half hour away from me. We did. Trying to think what we did. We did a battle royal that night. That was all I was involved in. The next week was Albany, New York. Bit of a drive for me. And did a match, Sabu and Guido. I think it was Guido. It was either Sabu and Guido or Tony Mamluke, I forget which. So I did that, and on the way home, I decided I wasn't going to go back. The story started with, we want you to be part of this. You were part of the, we're getting the band back together, is basically how we were told. And between the pay-per-view and 2 days later, 2 weeks later, the second TV taping, it went from, we want you there, to we want you at the shows that you can get to. Then it became, we'll let you know when we need you. And the week after, it was the fourth week. I'm sorry. The third week was somewhere way out of the way, and I wasn't going to go to that. Wasn't going to drive to that. And then the next week was a show at the ECW arena, and TV at the Wells Fargo Center, which is the big arena here in Philly. And nobody called me about them. I've never been one to call anybody and beg for work. If I die today, that's one thing I'm proud of, that I've never begged anybody for work in the business. And so they did those shows, and I never got a call or anything. I didn't go over snooping around or go to say hello or anything, thinking that I could get some work. And that was it. I have a business outside of wrestling that I own, and I was making the same amount of money, if not more, outside of wrestling, without all the travel and all the bullshit that goes along with the business. So, and nobody ever offered me a deal. So I was like, okay, well, walk away. I mean, you're not offered insurance as a performer, even a referee, and I needed insurance for my family. So I was like, that's okay. I just won't bother. And that was the end of it. No, I didn't say goodbye to anybody, and nobody said goodbye to me.
I'll say good on you for that, to be honest. And I'm not just brown nosing you because you're speaking to me right now. But, you know, I think that takes like a lot of bottle, like, you know, balls. So what we say bottle down here. But yeah, and I think obviously to do that, I mean, something you love, but at the same time, it's, you know, don't want to let them sort of take the piss out of you, really, and just say, look, you know, oh, look, he's desperate for a job. So, you know.
Right. And plus I was still involved with wrestling. With other things, I was helping training at the Monster Factory at the time. We were running a little promotion out of there called Old Time Wrestling. So I was still keeping my hands into it, and, you know, keeping involved with, so I wouldn't go absolutely crazy from you know, completely cutting away from the business. So I was still involved. Not that I was making any money doing that, but, you know, it's still being a part of it.
I was just about to ask, actually, because you were a trainer at the Monster Factory in New Jersey, training wrestlers. So I just want to know, what was that like for you to be involved in? And also, you helped train current United States champion, Sheamus. Just want to know, what was that like?
The Sheamus part, well, I didn't do a lot of the training because I'm not really trained. So I would help the guys with the beginning, the smaller things, the locking up and their footwork and things like that. I was doing more things in the way of running the business, running the school, making sure the bills were getting paid, and, you know, all that kind of stuff, and booking the shows that we were running. With Sheamus, he came to us, and he was 18 or 19 at the time, something like that, and he wasn't. He wasn't as focused about the business as he is now. I think he was more focused on the fact that he was a kid traveling in another country and having a good time, and he was having a good time. You know, I think any kid was like. I mean, I was like that when I was 19 and went to California for 6 months. Yeah. So I understand where he was coming from. But I think the most important thing of his training from my end is that I told him to go home, because his visa was about ready to run out.
Oh,
and I said, if you let this visa run out, you're going to be in so much trouble if you do try to come back. So that was most of the training that I did for Sheamus. But yeah, I mean, I helped him. I helped him. You know, a few years later, he had already been trained over in Ireland with Whip, I think, helped with his training. And he gave me a call because WWE was coming through and Dreamer was in the office at the time. So I made a call to Dreamer for him and got him hooked up. And I think the next year when they came through, he'd already been hooked. He'd already been seen one time. And of course, Finley was his contact now. So Finley was the one that really brought him in. But yeah, I mean, I had a little bit to do with the training of Sheamus, but very little.
Oh, fair play, man. I'm glad you told that story on here. So basically, to sort of kind of wrap this up, I want to know what have been because obviously ref bumps are a big thing, part of the role. What have been some of the most painful experiences of being a referee?
The 2000 Heatwave pay-per-view from Los Angeles. The main event was Just Incredible against Tommy Dreamer in a Stairway to Hell match.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided to go out through the crowd. And I started following them. And I got on partially over the guardrail. I had both legs over the guardrail, kind of sitting on it.
Mm-hmm.
And cameraman came up from behind me and hit me in the back of the head with the camera. And I went knees first to the concrete and did a partial tear of my ACL. So that took me out for a while. Fractured my wrist one time in a match with the Dudleys. Did the do-si-do back into the corner, and I went like this, and my hand went like that. My fault. And let's see, I got a broken nose from Rob Van Dam.
Oh, really? How'd that happen?
It was a match between him and Balls Mahoney.
Mm-hmm.
And I was standing behind Balls. Balls swung the chair, of course. Rob missed, or he missed Rob. Rob came up spinning, and Balls ducked, so Balls ducks, and I get the foot in the nose. I was in too far away. I should have been in closer where my head got hit. Not that would be any better than I get kicked in the head. But he just clipped my nose just enough to send it in another direction. But they were the worst, though.
You pretty much have the best seat in the house as a referee, but it will also have a very important role. So I want to ask the last question. And normally I ask, who's your favorite wrestler? What's your favorite match? But I think you pretty much answered your favorite memories from ECW. So I just want to ask, besides yourself, who else? Basically, who are your favorite referees in the business? You can go past, you can go present. It's up to you. It's your answer.
I won't say any present, and not out of disrespect or anything, but I really don't watch the product that closely, so I don't really know the referees that well. So no disrespect to them at all. For me, it's got to be the first referee I think I ever saw was Dick Worley. So he was the main referee in the WWF at the time. So I definitely him. Then when the NWA came around, Tommy Young, incredible. Tommy Young is, I think, the best tag team referee to ever be. He really, really knew the positioning and what to do and when to do it, and where to be and everything. He knew every little nuance about being a tag team referee. So definitely him. Working with John Finnegan, I got to say, John and I were great friends, and we've known each other since day one of me getting in the ring. So that's from 1990. In fact, John and I are going to reunite for a show. I'm reffing for the first time in like 7 years, and we're reuniting for a show May the 1st, the ECWA. I don't know if anybody in Europe knows what the company is, but they've been around for about 50 years, and they do a tournament every year called the Super 8.
It rings a bell. It does ring a bell. Okay,
so we're both working that this year, which will be fun. First time we've worked together in a while as referees. But yeah, definitely Tommy Young and Dick Worley. A guy I worked with, I have great respect for. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. Billy Caputa was a WWF and WWE referee. He worked for the state of New York. So he was a state assigned referee, and I worked with him a lot on the independents after ECW, and he knew what he was doing too. He was a great referee.
Cool, man. I like the answer as well, because I think most people may have said, I'll help him and stuff. And I personally am just not the biggest fan of him. So I like to hear about different things and sort of, different answers. It's good. ECW, if you sort of had to present it to someone that's never watched an episode before, how would you present it to someone? What made ECW special to you?
The biggest comparison I would use, the easiest one for me, would be to say ECW was the band Nirvana. They had their crowd, they had their fans, they had their fan base. They went up like a rocket and crashed in that quick of a time. If you look at it as big and as popular as ECW was, and people still chant it at shows here and there, even at WWE shows, ECW wasn't around as long as like a Ring of Honor or a TNA or things like that.
Yeah.
Which goes, is credit to all the guys that we were that popular that people still remember us.
And where were you? So I know, like, I think I said last question about the referee one, but I'm
That's
enjoying
okay.
talking to you. Sorry. I just kind of popped to my head. I was like, I'm going to ask enough question. Where was you when you found out ECW was going out of business?
I was home, I think. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I was home. Like I said, I did some work behind the scenes for him. I did promoting. So I would go out to the towns 2-3 weeks ahead of schedule, meet up with the street team, get them all the flyers, and go to, if I needed to go to a radio station or talk with the ticket people or whatever. And then I would catch up with the guys, the show on the weekend. And I think it was the week after the last show, they said, don't go out. No, we don't need you to go to wherever it was. And so I thought, that's not good. So I kind of, because I was there at the last show, and I really didn't feel it was, the last show. I had an inkling that it was, but I had all hope that it wasn't.
Sounds like what Rhino said before. Well, I want to thank you for coming on to What You Call It podcast. It's much appreciated. Where can fans find you on social media?
The only place you can find me on social media is on Twitter. And it's at Jim Molineaux, and Molineaux is spelled Molineaux. I know there's a couple of different British spellings of the name.
That's make everything awkward.
But it's Molineaux.
Brilliant.
And it's, like I said, I'm only on Twitter.
I shall add that in the description, but thank you for coming on. And for everyone that's listening, stay tuned. There will be more of What Do You Call It podcast.